All right. Well, thank you everyone for making the trip over here. I hope you really enjoy this. This is really going to be a kind of a fun evening and really gets you into seeing what the real world is like at two departments. A little later on, we're going to see the new Addison Consolidated Dispatch Center, which is opened about a year ago. But we're here at Public Works, and we're going to get a tour of Public Works. We're also going to see the unveiling of some new technology. But first, I would like to introduce to you my boss, the mayor of the Village of Addison, Rich Veenstra. Mayor Veenstra, welcome. And these are our students from Northern Illinois University.
Well, I want to welcome all of you here to Addison, and just assure you that this is the backside of Addison, so you really haven't seen our community. And Don also told me that anybody that was able to find this location gets an automatic A, so you guys are good. But a lot of good things go on in Addison, and I'd love to be able to tell you all about them, but Don gave me an outline of what I can say and told me I could do it in 5 minutes. And I think all of you met Mayor Craig 2 weeks ago, so you know that nobody tells a mayor how long to talk or what to say. So Rod and I are good friends, so I can say that. But a lot of good things go on, and you all are learning about municipal government and what happens, the nuts and bolts of operations. Working together with the administrative, the elected officials is critical. Having good relationships, being able to kid back and forth, being able to be open and honest about new ideas, new ways of doing things, really makes for a healthy environment. And learning that if you're doing it for the right reasons, which is serving the public, you can never go wrong. And if that's the motivator for elected officials, as well as the staff and the people that are working in the village, you really can build some really dynamic and really great operational aspects. We're very proud of a lot of the things that we've done. You'll see our ACDC, which is truly state of the art, and we provide, and I'm not going to steal their thunder, but 911 services for 15 other municipalities and taxing bodies. Big responsibility, but we really believe we do it better than everybody because we work together with the other agencies. And that's really, I think, a critical thing to remember is teamwork and collaboration really get you a lot farther than trying to be the Lone Ranger and creating things yourself. So again, I welcome you to Addison, and I'm not going to bore you anymore. Rick Federici is in charge of our Public Works Department, and he's going to take it over, right?
Welcome to the Village of Addison. Welcome to the Public Works Department. So what I'm going to do, my name is Rick Federici, by the way. I'm Director of Public Works. I've been the director for about 4.5 years now, but I've been with the village for 28 years. Prior to being in the Public Works, I was in the Environmental Services Department. I came actually from our laboratory. We have a laboratory for our 2 wastewater facilities. So I was a chemist in the lab and did some field work, testing streams and things like that, stormwater. So that's kind of where I came from, and then for, like I said, the last 4.5 years, been here at the Public Works Department. This facility houses 4 of our divisions. We have 8 divisions across Public Works. The 4 that are here are the Street Department, the Electrical and Forestry Department, our Water Department, and then our Central Garage, which we will tour here in just a little bit as we get after this part of the demonstration. And then we have 4 other facilities. So we have, as I mentioned, we have 2 wastewater plants. They're both on Salt Creek. Many of you are already in government, so you're probably familiar with the aspects of those. So we have 2 wastewater plants. And then we also have an underground in our sewer utility. That's at another location. So we actually have 4 locations in Public Works. So we're kind of spread out. It's a big group. There's about 64 people altogether in our Public Works department. And we cover a lot of ground. We manage, besides the 2 wastewater facilities, we essentially manage 4 utilities because we're doing the streetlight system, the sanitary system, the stormwater system, and the water system. So in addition to that, we have to manage those 4 utilities out in the field as well. So we have what we've tried to do really in the last 5 or 6 years. We've had a big push to try to rebuild our infrastructure. We've updated with a lot of technology at a lot of our pump stations. We have SCADA communications, which is radio communications between all of our pump stations, our water stations, and things like that, so that people can actually monitor and control systems from at home or from their desktop. Makes things very easy then to do that remotely. We've just had lots of other upgrades with infrastructure, with pipes, water mains, and it's an ongoing struggle, and many of you know that work for other towns towns. It just never ends doing those things. And then you have the daily repairs, service requests. We get, I don't know, 50 or so a week of service requests for my trees down. There's other problems going on and all those sorts of things. So we have, as I mentioned, we have 4 utilities that we oversee. It takes a lot of people, and it's a lot of effort, and a lot of specialized areas of knowledge that people have here in each of those divisions. So it does take a long time to learn your trade, and we do have a lot of people that have been here for a long time that can work here for 30 or 40 years, but it can take 5 or 10 years just to kind of wrap your head around the job. There's a lot of detail, there's a lot of things to learn in each of these positions. So it does take some time to get that experience, to get that background and training, and then eventually to go out and do the job. We'll take a tour here in a minute, but a couple other things I wanted to mention. One thing that we've focused on a lot is technology. We've had a big push in technology. We have a citizen app, and a lot of other towns do as well, where from their smartphone or a tablet, they can report a problem to the town. They pick the category, whether it's a street light or a pothole, and they can, it'll capture their location, it'll capture their GPS point, and they can even send a photo or a video, and then they send that off to us. What's nice is that goes right directly to the supervisor and the assistant supervisor in that particular department, and it's instantaneous. They can send a note back, hey, thank you, we're gonna go check that out here later today or tomorrow, depending on what the problem is. So that's helped immensely. That's getting used more and more by our community, and it's convenient for them, and it's convenient for us, and I'll show you in a minute here how it's really eliminated a lot of paperwork and other things that we had been doing. So I think with that, let me get into this a little bit. The program is called Lucidity, the software program. There are many programs out there that are being used by towns. CityWorks is a big one. Cartograph is a big one. This one is also GIS based. All of you are familiar with GIS? Probably all of you are. Okay. This runs off of our centralized mapping system, and it's integrated with that system. So everything that you'll see here is actually in our GIS system. I've actually already opened it right up into a map. Each of the departments can turn on and turn off any of the layers, just like you can in GIS. And when they're walking out in the field with a tablet, it finds their location. And so right as they're standing over, whether it be a manhole or a water valve, whatever particular item or asset that they're working on, they can just click on it, and then it can pop up whether or not we want to do a work order or some other maintenance. That actual asset record comes up in the system. And so we can see, I don't know what's on right now. These look like these are maybe street light poles. I'm sorry, these are probably trees. I'll see if it calls one up. Yes, this is a tree. If you could see here, it has then all of our GIS information is here, the zone, the address, type of tree, even its Latin name, if you can see. All the features of that asset are there. And then from that, we click on, and I don't get into detail, but there's some icons up on top. The hard hat means we're going to do work against that. And so you click on that, and then the form opens up, and they can go ahead and do their work. And in that form, they can put, if there's any issues, they can take pictures, and they can record their time and any equipment or materials that they use. So it's really nice on this ticket system. They do that. They do it all from a tablet, remote, and they close out the system, then they're done. They go on to the next job. So we've eliminated all paper use out in the field. And again, they're so used to using these maps in GIS, so it kind of becomes second nature for them to go into these systems and call them up and use them. It's something that we're just in the middle of incorporating. We started about 3 months ago, so we're still kind of building the system. But you will see, and many of you probably have already seen systems like this. And then from our dashboard, we can run reports. We can look at work orders that are already in the system. Service request, we track the people who called, their information. This way we can communicate. We also keep that then for running reports. Or if someone goes out to an address from their laptop or their tablet, they can call up that address and they can see, okay, we were here for a water leak. They've, we can see the whole history of that property. They called about a tree being down, or we've actually maybe been out somewhere twice because of sewer backup, and our person in the field can see that right at their fingertips. So it's been a great system. We're still learning it, but it's really opened up a lot more potential for us to be much more efficient, quicker response to our residents, and we're able to manage a lot of information where we just used to have file after file after file, throughout each of our departments, trying to track everything on paper or on Excel spreadsheets, which sometimes is hard to do. So this system's been great so far, and we're looking forward to using it even more. So, and many towns use this system or systems like this to manage work orders and service requests. So, okay, I think with that, any questions so far about Addison Public Works or how we're structured or things that we oversee? Yes?
Are you guys, does that app track potholes and keeping data for that as well?
Yes, so we can go into that, and if we go into the street layer, then we can filter by any potholes, by street, by area, and it will show those, and they'll come up as marks in the street, because we can actually capture that location. We'll either tie it to an actual point or to a street segment. But then yes, we can go back and look, and we can see, okay, we've had 30 on this block, and maybe it's time we address this street. It might be time. But we can do a lot of other analytics on the back side of this that we're just starting to learn now. Where we can do those kinds of assessments. Yes?
When you create maps, do you take that data from Lucidity, or however you pronounced it? Can you take that in like ArcGIS Pro and ArcGIS Desktop to kind of just play around with it?
Yes, so they actually talk back and forth. The map that I showed you in Lucidity is actually running from ArcGIS. So it brings it up into there. What's stored in Lucidity is the actual database tables associated with all that GIS data. And like I said, there are many other platforms that run that same way, like those other products that I mentioned. But GIS is the key piece, and it's something that going forward, it's going to be just our main, of everything we do will be based on that. Even at our treatment plant, we run things out of there, even though it's not so much a geospatial issue, but we keep track of equipment and the different plant buildings and things like that. We can also keep through the GIS. So, yes?
Does the staff like the new program? Do you bring the tablet out there, or are they kind of having trouble making the transition?
It's been a little rough at first. There are some people that are more adept just at mobile devices than others. So there was quite a learning curve. There's a little bit more for them to enter in the field because they were used to always just calling in or working off a ticket, and they can pretty quickly make a note. So certainly as we first started, it took a little time for them to navigate through the tablet. Where do you put your work hours? Where do you put your equipment and things like that? But they like the features. They like the map that they're actually standing out there as they're walking around with the tablet. They can identify that specific asset. So it's pretty easy for them to get into that step. But there's a few more steps, mostly related to timesheets and equipment and materials that they were either just capturing with a quick note that now they have to type those in. What's nice is on the mobile devices, you can just speak. There's a microphone. So even in our comment box of what they did, they can just hit the microphone and say, okay, we went there, we routed out this line, it's flowing, we notified the resident, and it will type as you talk, and you know how good that can be. It can be good at times, and other times it doesn't quite capture what you're saying. But it has been a little bit of a struggle, and I hear that from all the other towns that implement something like this. Because for some that have been here for 30 or 40 years, they haven't even touched a computer, and now it's, okay, here you go, And it wasn't that simple, but even with training, it's still. But what's great is the peers work among themselves; they help each other, and it's moving along. So we'll get there. We haven't seen any major stumbling, but it takes some time.
The Lucidity application is really part of an entire organization-wide build-out of a brand new management system that we're now using, not only in Public Works, all departments, purchasing, time entry, HR, the utility billing that Rick is dealing with. So this was a top to bottom organizational change, and it's taken just a couple of years of checking out the companies and all the systems that they would be using and what's the right fit for the village. And they're not done. There's still even more things that need to be done. So Lucidity was one part of that. Thankfully, it talks to Addison Connect, which we already had here, and it's nice because the two merge. So for the resident, no change. They're still using the same app that they already loaded onto their phone or their mobile device, whatever it is that they use. We didn't have to then go and get a new app, which obviously would have cost more money, and been very inefficient to do that. This way, we already have a product or a system in place that talks to a brand new system. Who would have thought, you know, in this day and age, you would think it would all be proprietary. Nope, you got to use our app to talk to this. Well, it didn't work out that way. It's actually much better for everybody, and as a result, you know, we save money in having to start up all over again. It was enough to get it going in the first place and get people to be thinking about using this app. We don't want to have to change it now after just maybe 3 years or so. So we were very fortunate that it all worked out. But this is an ongoing thing, organization-wide, and if you haven't already experienced something like this, you will, and you'll see that it is it's a huge change in how you've been able to, you know, operate and do all your communications up to this point. So.
Yes, and like any software, it's what you make of it, it's how you build it, how you customize it, how you use it, because it's a very powerful tool, but like other software platforms, sometimes we only use maybe that 20% of it, and it has all these other features and potential for reporting and doing other analytics and things like that that sometimes you don't even get to, but it's really what you put into it that you get out of it, and it can be a really good tool. So we're looking forward to that. So any other questions before?
Is there an engineering division, part of Public Works? Or they both?
Ours is separate. So towns are all set up differently, but we have a community development department, which is our building division, and engineering. But of course, we work very closely with both departments, but primarily engineering. There's a lot of interchange between the two. So yeah, some structure engineering as a division of Public Works in many places as well. So. This facility was built just for Public Works. There was actually nothing out here. This is an old Nike missile base. So if any of you are familiar with that, back in the Cuban Missile Crisis, there were missile bases set up all over Chicagoland. So there was a base right here and a launch site. There was missile launch pads just north of us here. So the site was vacated then in the late 70s and then was acquired by the village. Many years later, then fast forward around 1998, this facility was built. So it's just over 20 years, just had our 20th anniversary. The old facility was just a small garage at the other end of town. We could barely fit all of our divisions in there. So this was planned just for Public Works, so a lot of thought went into it. One of the first things you notice is that the main garage and building, where all of our equipment, machines, trucks, it's actually physically separated, so we don't hear the noise or the vibration from everything that's going on in the back garage, which we'll take a walk through. So that was one of the things that they thought of for design. All the foreman's offices are up here, and then our main office is up here to the left for secretarial staff and the admin staff in the front. So, but we will take a walk. Let's start, we'll go right out this way through the garage here. So our main garage here, as I mentioned, was for the three field departments that are here, which is water, electrical, forestry, and street department. Each of them have a workshop that are located along here. So they each have their own storage. They have a place where they have a computer. They can work on some of the things. They have a couple benches and tools and things like that. But what's nice is that each one has their own workstation and their own storage facility. Up above us, there's a mezzanine also for extra storage. As you can see, we're pretty tight. We've already filled the space that was built back in '98. There's probably about 50 trucks here. At this location, we have about another 20 at our other locations. Obviously, some of the larger trucks, our plow trucks, as some of you know, are very expensive when you get up into that kind of equipment. In fact, we just purchased one. It's a little over $200,000. We have about 6 of the large trucks. We do all the snow plowing in town. We usually send about 25 trucks out in each event. So that means when it snows, all of Public Works plows. Even if you're working like I did in the lab, you have to go out and plow. Everybody helps to plow. And so we're able to cover that in 2 shifts. Almost all of our vehicles have plows except for some of the smaller ones. We do offer a lot of services to our residents. We have a branch pickup service. So our tree department, our forestry department will take care of that. Water department, of course, maintains. The 2 vehicles that you see over to the right are filled. Those are for water main breaks exclusively. So they have all the equipment on board, generators, compressors, everything that you would need to do a water main break, of course, which we have a lot of those, especially in the winter, as do most towns. So they need to have everything with them. They have to work quick. They're working outside, obviously in very very extreme conditions. So it's worked out well to have those vehicles ready to roll. Chippers, of course, high rangers, street lights. We maintain all of the street lights in town. So of course we have the high rangers. We have a couple electricians that take care of that every day. And then along with our street department, pavers and signs. Also a big part of that. In fact, we'll go down and look at the sign shop. So, obviously this is our sign shop. We have quite an inventory. We have a lot of signs that we change out. One of the reasons, and everyone actually has to do, is because of transportation specifications. The reflectivity on these only lasts about 5 to 7 years. So we have something like 3,000 or 4,000 signs, and so they have to be changed on that cycle. So in this department, they manage that and bring new signs out once they've met that. Especially regulatory signs, not as critical with the street signs, but which are all stored over there. We do keep a lot of extra signs that have people's names, and you could probably imagine why that is. Those seem to walk most frequently. So anything, we have like a Nicole Court, and we have an Ann, you know, we keep a big supply of those, unfortunately. So, but that happens. So it's a tip to towns, don't name it with first names, because it's hard to keep the signs up. So that's one of the things we battle. Then the regulatory signs are right around here. Also, we keep those. We used to do a lot more. We used to create and make the signs here and paint. More and more, we've contracted that out, and I think it's similar to most other towns. So we can stock all the regulatory signs, speed limits, all of those, and we can really quickly get those up. Believe it or not, about once a week we have a sign knocked down. Same with the street light. We average about one a week. So it seems hard. Even when there's nice weather, people still go off the road and run over our stuff. So they're also busy doing that, replacing signs at corners, street lights, and things like that. So one of the things we are also doing now, and I don't have a sample in here, we've gone to the lit street signs on our main thoroughfares. Also something that's becoming more and more common that you're probably seeing as you drive around Chicago. So we have about almost half of our major thoroughfares are done now with lit signs at all of our major intersections. So, and that's a nice feature. I think the residents really like it. Certainly visitors like it coming through towns that they're not familiar with at night, and it really does help. It's a nice look throughout the community. So that's been a big project of ours. We have about another year and a half of that to install all of those. So when there's a water main break, the question was how quick do we repair water main breaks? Once they're called in, our person get out there within an hour, assess what's going on. Then we have to call in for locate. So that's usually what slows us down, because we can't dig without doing a Julie call, where they have to come out and locate all the utilities. So there's usually a 2 to 4 hour delay for that. And then once we get started, it's about 4 to 5 hours for a typical water main. So that whole process does take some time, and typically those are overnight. So it can be long nights for many of our staff. You can see these are actually all loaded for salt. We are expecting a few more storms yet this week, so we usually keep them filled so that they're ready to roll, because again, at 1 in the morning, we don't want to have a long line of trucks, waiting to get filled up. So as mentioning, all the trucks are filled and ready to go. We usually do that throughout the winter. Other equipment, tractors, you can see we have all of our Christmas decorations are stored here. They've actually just finally took most of those down. We do decorate at Village Hall and some of our other facilities throughout town, our museum and things like that. Our department's responsible for doing those decorations, our electrical and forestry. That's a big part of their jobs leading up into it in October, and then takedown. And unfortunately, we've had terrible weather, and it's taken us some time, and the conditions have just been terrible for doing that kind of work. So, okay, we'll continue on into the garage then. One of the things I'm sure you've noticed too is more and more towns are doing anti-icing, which is spraying liquids down. You've probably seen the striping on the roads. We have that truck, and I don't see our other truck. We have 2 trucks that we can go out ahead of a storm and put down liquids. It's usually salt brine, or else it's a special mix for low temperatures. I think these are all loaded with the low temperature. That creates, it's almost like spraying PAM on a cooking sheet, or so it prevents ice from forming a bond to the pavement. It helps prevent that bond so that it takes less salt on the back end to clean up and de-ice everything. So it's something that's being practiced all throughout DuPage County. And we've seen a drop of, our goal was 25%, and I believe we've already exceeded that of total rock salt use. So we've been able to minimize the amount of chlorides, which is a big issue for environmental reasons in our local streams. So we've been able to attack that by using more and more liquids. There's also liquids on board, you can't see them, but inside the trucks right behind the cabs, we also carry tanks of about 500 or 600 gallons, and then we also add extra liquid. That way we can back down the amount of rock salt that we have to use to clear the roads. So. But it's a tricky balance because we have to make everything safe, of course, and that's our first priority. But we're able to do some things and manage it and be wise about how much salt that we are using. So, okay, we're going to come right through here then into our main garage. And again, I apologize, it's a little tight. All right, so this is our fleet services garage. This is just for our mechanics. We actually right now have 4 mechanics that work on all village vehicles. In addition to that, we also maintain the vehicles for the fire department. So they also rotate their vehicles in. We have altogether, boy, I want to say it's over 100 total vehicles when you count the squad cars, all of our equipment, building department, administration department. It's well over 100 vehicles. So there's a lot of work, there's a lot of routine maintenance, and then there's a lot of specialized maintenance. If you guys step forward, you can see we're actually upfitting 2 new squad cars. We do all of that in-house. So one of our mechanics specializes in wiring, wires all of the computers, the light racks, all their equipment, everything that's needed, communications, those are all done in-house. So it does take some time from the time we order these to get them upfitted and on the street. We do all Ford Explorers. I don't know, towns are all different, but our officers really like this. They like to be higher up in the road. They're all-wheel drive. So we've been really happy with the performance of these. And again, since we do all the installs, it's really good because then we have people that can troubleshoot when things and they do go wrong. The computers don't work. They have other types of issues with the lights or sirens. But the fact that our staff puts them in, we can pretty quickly fix any issues. Looking, you see we have some others in for service. Everything they need, there's about 8 or 9 bays for doing the work. You can see everything is dropped down, all their air, different fluids. Everything drops down from the ceiling, from tanks that are in the back. So really user-friendly. Our mechanics love it since they were working out of a space with about 4 bays prior to this, back before this was built. We have, if you notice on the wall, the blue, those are exhaust tubes. So actually they can run vehicles in here and do testing with all the doors closed. And there's a special system then to carry the exhaust away. So that's what you see at each of those doors. We don't do it that often, but it has capable of running, because sometimes they do, for diagnostic purposes, have to run them inside. As I mentioned, we do work for the fire department. We're hoping maybe even some of the other agencies will come on board. We've talked to the school district and our park district, because it really makes sense, because we can do it here very efficiently. A lot of them go out to private, and it's very expensive. So we do talk about maybe taking on some other agencies. And we do that with salt right now. We share the salt. We have a dome here. But any agency in Addison can use the salt. So the school districts, park districts, they all come here for salt. So that's great, because then they don't have to maintain a site with any kind of storage or buy it. We get it at a much better rate because, of course, we're buying mountains worth of salt every year. So we get a very good price. So that partnership has worked out well. Sharing those services with other agencies. And we're looking to do more of that. I know the mayor's a big proponent of that, to try to share services wherever and whenever we can to be more efficient. It's really in the interest of all the different public bodies to start thinking that way. And a garage is a great way to do it, because we have everything here, the resources, the people, and we can do it, and we're not for profit, so they can't beat our price usually. So okay, on the back side of that, there is a wash tunnel. I won't take you out there. It's a large truck wash tunnel, and then our fuel islands. But since it's not very nice out there, I won't take you out there. But there's some other storage and salt and things like that on the ground. So I know that was kind of a quick tour, but just to kind of give you an idea of it. And for many of you maybe haven't been in your public works department, I know even here we'll still have people that have been at the village forever. It's like, I've never been here, because kind of each department's kind of on their own island, especially us physically are on our own island, pretty far from everybody else. so they don't get that opportunity to see it. So, you know, we've tried to do some things in the past where we've tried to do some outreach. We've had open houses. We've had them at our other facilities. Earth Day, we did one at one of our wastewater plants. But it's hard to engage the public. That's one of the things we struggle with. We try to, you know, you try to communicate, you try to reach out and do the best we can to market things and promote things. But it's hard. People are busy and they want to spend their Saturday walking around a plant or a facility necessarily. But we keep trying, and that's the hope that we'll make some connection, and some people we like, so that's something we want to keep doing as we go forward a little bit more, get people more engaged as much as you can. It's hard these days, and that's one of the things we struggle with. We try to get our message out of what we're doing, what we're trying to do every day with our maintenance, with our repairs. We try to do things quick. We try to be courteous, of course, to all the residents. Problems still come up, though, and that's the downside of the job is when you've done everything you can and people still aren't happy or they're frustrated or not happy in general with the government performance or what you've done, and you just have to kind of move on and keep going. And I know a lot of you that work already for agencies, sometimes get that. And that's the hard part when you're doing the best you can, and man, can't make everyone happy, but you certainly do the best you can to try to do that in all the different areas.
Rick, do you want to comment a little bit about some of the work that your crews have had to do during this winter? I know you were just talking to the mayor a little while ago. I mean, you guys have had everything, and it all comes really to keeping streets open, keeping the water systems working. So, I mean, we've all had to experience it, but you want to touch a little bit about, how you schedule people when you have emergencies like bad weather and what's involved in that and budgeting and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, this year especially has been really tough with the ice storms, cold weather, up and down, and sometimes worse on us than just a steady cold. We battle, of course, just taking care of the streets and de-icing and doing all of that. But the weather also, when we had the deep freeze, we had 7 or 8 frozen services, so then people are calling and their actual water line to their house was frozen. So we have to go out there and try to manage that. We can usually get that warmed up and get that fixed, but that's something we have to deal with. Our equipment at our wastewater plants oftentimes will freeze up, lock up. We'll have situations with pumps. So it's kind of this endless where you're kind of on the edge, dealing with all this. When we have big storms come through, typically the forecasting has gotten so good that a day or two in advance, we already know. And we typically then go on a 12-12, which means all of our staff get split in half in every department. So that way we can still manage each department as calls come in and other things. And then we can still then do all the street plowing and salting and everything else that we need to do. So we've had to do that, I think, twice this winter, going to what we call emergency operations. And that's 12 on and 12 off in a continuous, couple of days until everything is back to normal. And then we can go back. So that is something that's tough to manage, especially when it's over the holidays and we have people off, and then we're running with a little bit of shorter staff.
Do all your workers plow when you have an emergency like that? Is everyone, on your field crews, are they all expected to work?
Yep, everyone's been trained. Everyone can do the plowing. We have we have to have a CDL for the larger trucks, so that is a little bit more limited of a group. But no, we've had everybody out. At some point plowing. I was out once, I think, this year, but everyone and whoever can help, we just, it's got to be done. It's not a question of if we can get to it or when, or, so we all do that. But yeah, all except for maybe a few office staff are out plowing. So it's a dangerous job too.
One of the things that Rick touched on is educating the public. And yesterday I spoke to 100 second graders, and their questions are, what do you do? What do the people that work for the village do? And everybody, whether it's a second grader or an adult, they expect when they turn on the faucet, it's magic, the water comes out of the faucet. Or when they flush the toilet, it works. Or when it snows, the plow comes out and doesn't. They don't understand all of the work that goes behind making that happen. And if you're in a position in a municipal government to educate the public, I would highly recommend that you do wherever you can, explain to them what goes on, because when they understand that, then if the street doesn't get plowed in 3 minutes, they get it. If the water is having a problem, there's a leak, they know what's involved in going back and fixing a pipeline or something like that. But the more you could educate your public, the more they'll understand what goes on behind the scenes, and quite frankly, what their tax dollars are going for. And that's critical.
Yeah, something else we're looking to do is really enhance our website. So with regards like to construction, because we get a lot of calls about construction. Obviously, we're coming up to that season now. We're ramping up. We're going to have 4 or 5 big projects throughout town. We want to push stuff out so that people can go to one site and say, oh, here's what they're doing here and why they're doing it. It's roadway, it's water main, it's all these things that we're doing for improving the town, but at least can hopefully answer some of the questions that they may have, and it'll give them a one-point source to go to get that information. I've seen some towns do a really great job having construction pages or project pages. So that's something that we're looking to do. Yeah, anything we can do to better communicate in any way that we can to the residents is important. Certainly for understanding, as Mayor said, what we do and what it entails. So. Other questions about?
Maybe we should just mention a little bit, and I was talking to Jack Versagilis earlier, who's Rick's assistant here. The very site that we are situated on here is somewhat unique, and you may have to fill me in on the history of some of this, but the Village of Addison's owned this property a lot longer than this building was actually in place.
I did mention, yes, when we started the tour,
Okay.
that it was a former Nike missile site, missile base, and there was actually an Army battalion here, quite a few workers that were here from the late 60s to early 70s. So it took a lot to convert the site. There was some remediation, some environmental remediation that had to be done, but all of that was taken care of. The only thing is, and you'll probably hear more about this when you go over to the dispatch center, when we built that, we actually we hit some of the underground bunkers and launch pads and things that we thought were in a slightly different position. So you can imagine the building's ready to go up, it's all been designed and engineered, and we go in and then we're hitting concrete. So even though we did spot checks and we had old plans, things were a little bit not quite where they should have been. So that was a large undertaking. They ended up having to move the building about 20 or 30 feet out of the way of these sites, because we couldn't, the concrete walls were 3 or 4 feet thick with rebar like every couple inches. And I mean, it was built to take a hit here, which is scary to think of, but that's what it was built for. So you can't really break that apart or work around it. You have to move over out of its way because it's not going anywhere. So that was one of the things that we had to struggle with. So
before you moved into this building, your department was on Villa Avenue, and that was a whole different area then because it was a much smaller building and very inefficient. The central garage that you saw, where all the trucks were parked in the back, where they used to be, it was much smaller. They'd have to move trucks in and out every day, which took time, cost a lot of money, and which is why the village board, probably mid-90s, I'd say, is when they started to say, we got to get serious about our public buildings. Because that's the one thing, it doesn't make the top of the list most of the time, talking about a new village hall, a new public works building, some of the other things that we did during that time. And from about, I'd say maybe mid-90s to the early 2000s is when the village finally got serious about their own facilities. This building was built, the village hall, close to the center of town, and we did some other projects too, because it's very inefficient when you have to do that kind of stuff just because you don't have the space and they don't have the technology that they need to get the work done. So now when you come to this building, it looks very nice and everything. They really worked for decades in a facility that was was undersized and not efficient at all. We're lucky to have it.
yes, we are. Yeah, we said
that's an
that.
important aspect too, just for retaining quality staff. If the working conditions are attractive and comfortable, you have longevity, and we have a remarkable record of longevity in the village. And so that was a real important factor, is what does it mean to our employees? How can we get the best employees and maintain them? It's by creating a good environment for them. So that was a real focus of the board for quite a few years.
So what's the traffic signal replacement look like? Because I don't remember, did we see those in there? Or the big traffic signals?
You did not. So that is something that we contract out. So all the lit traffic signals is something years ago we used to maintain. And that also just got to be as a very specialized area. And so there are a couple of really good firms that do that type of work. So that's all contracted out. actually, if you look over the last 25 years, there's kind of been a trend for a little bit less staff and a little bit more contracting of some of those day-to-day things that we used to do, some of the maintenance, grounds maintenance and cutting grass. And I mentioned the branch pickup actually just a few years ago. We ended up, now that's a contractor that we have a service right at the curbside for residents to pick up branches. That's contracted out. So we've struck a nice balance of having that kind of work done where it makes economic sense, where they're still providing a good level of service though as well to the community, where they may not even notice that this is being done. Hydrant painting, things like that now. More and more we contract out.
Yeah, and I've seen the traffic signals like up close. Just so you guys know, if you don't already, those are big. Those are actually really big. They look small up there and stuff like that, but when you're actually standing next to them,
Right. Even like when I pulled out just one of those regular street signs and it's this big, and you see them on the corner and they look like they're that big. Yeah. So, but yeah, like I said, we try to strike a balance, and you have to be careful. But it's because when you're not, it's a little bit tougher to manage things through a contractor. It sometimes almost takes as much time and effort to keep them on focus and doing a good job within budget. So that can take a lot of management time. But in the end of the day, we look at that and it still makes sense to do certain things via contract. So, all right, other questions? Okay. Well, thank you all for visiting Public Works. Please, if you have any other questions, I'll be around yet a little bit before you head over to ACDC, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.